What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Now, I'm really excited because this is the last Newswave before too many games, which is this weekend. Tomorrow, I'll be heading up to the Greater Philadelphia Expo Center in Oaks, PA, and having a good time with a lot of people who enjoy retro games in general, or just games at all. It's a lot of fun. It's going on from today until Sunday. I'll mostly be there tomorrow on Saturday from when they open the doors at 10 a.m. till roughly 4 or 5 p.m. So if you're in the area, Philadelphia or in Oaks, PA, come on by the convention center and have some fun with some retro games. With that, guys, let's get started. And the first bit of news today is about the Nintendo Switch and its stock shortages. It's no secret that people are legitimately having a hard time finding the Nintendo Switch in their normal retail outlets, whether you're going to Walmart or Target or Best Buy. Usually they tell you they're getting a few in, and then you have to wait in line hours before they open. At least in my area you do. I don't know how different it is for some of you guys, but for me, finding one in the wild is very difficult. And we did see Nintendo of Japan kind of put out a tweet saying, "We're sorry, we're trying." I assume they recently had a deal made for the part that's apparently tough to get right now, which are these flash chips, because Apple's battling them out. They did say that they are now, at this point, ramping up production to make sure that Splatoon 2 will have ample stock to help them out with the systems. Because obviously, if there's no systems, it's going to be harder to sell Splatoon 2 to a wider audience. There's going to be a lot of people go to the store and say, "I want Splatoon 2 and I want a Switch." Well, if you can't get a Switch, you're probably not going to buy Splatoon 2. That's just the way it is. So it looks like Nintendo is trying to push those out if they can. I assume right now they've probably made some sort of deal for flash chips, at least secured some ahead of time for Splatoon 2, because if they start making some in the past week or so, they should get more out for Splatoon 2 at this point, because it's still roughly a month or so away. And that would give them enough time, so many weeks, to put more stock out. But we did also get an interview from Ars Technica with a senior director of corporate communications. This is Charlie Scobetta. Had a few interesting things to say, mostly around this weird stock issue that they're having. So during the interview with Ars Technica, he said, "It's definitely not intentional in terms of shorting the market. We're making it as fast as we can. We want to get as many units out as we can to support all the software that's coming out right now. Our job is really to get it out as quickly as we can, especially for this holiday, because we want to have units on shelves to support Super Mario Odyssey. We anticipated there was going to be demand for it, but the demand has been even higher than we thought. We had a good quantity for launch. We sold 2.7 million worldwide in that first month. Said we're going to have 10 million more by the end of the fiscal year. Unfortunately, we're in a situation right now where as quick as it's going into retail outlets, it's being snapped up. It's a good problem to have, but we're working very hard to try and meet demand." Now, Nintendo is no stranger to having that problem. Remember when the Wii came out and it was getting ripped off of store shelves as fast as they could stock them, and people were crying about Nintendo not giving them enough Wiis? But you look back on it, and they managed to produce 100 million Wiis in a little over 5 years, which is insanity. Like, it was something crazy. It was like 5 or 6 years they had nearly 100 million units just out there in the wild. That's a lot of systems to produce that quickly. I mean, that's a lot. And at this point, the Switch is going through some trouble in manufacturing. We've heard about the flash chip conundrum with Apple and Nintendo fighting for these limited resources of these flash chips. I assume another 32 gigabyte flash chip, since, of course, the iPhone 7's lowest tier that you get into, that's usually the cheapest that people go for, is 32 gigabytes. That's the way it is. So it's tough. It really is. It looks like they've probably secured some. That's why they're willing now to announce that, hey, we're going to have more available for Splatoon 2 and apparently Mario Odyssey coming up, because it would be astronomically bad if Nintendo cannot put Switches in store for Mario Odyssey, because that is going to sell all of their Switches at Christmas time. Mario Odyssey is going to be on every big poster when you walk into a Walmart or end caps. Everything is going to be Mario, because that's what everyone remembers. Sure, Xenoblade 2 will be great, but let's get real. Mario is going to sell the system. If they don't have systems in stock to sell, Mario does not have the power that he should have, which is to push these units through lines to get people at home with Switches to move another 5 million at Christmas time. If they're not there, then what do you do? Now it at least looks like Nintendo recognizes the problem. They are trying hard to get this done. And this, to me, pretty much cements the fact that, yes, they are fighting people for flash chips, or at least some part, like the Wall Street Journal reported. That seems to be true, because with how hot this item is, it makes zero sense to hold back on stock. They must understand this, as we see in this interview with their communications, corporate communications person. it's just not a good look for them to not be putting stuff out. So I have a feeling something's holding them up. Looks like they may have figured it out. We'll see in the coming months, especially with Splatoon 2, to see what that media create number is on the week of Splatoon 2 when that launches. And guys, next up was a pretty surprising announcement, to be honest. I talked to you guys about this yesterday in Newswave, where we were going to have a look at Beyond Good and Evil 2 in some way. It was a tech demo they were going to show. Michael Ansel took to Instagram to say, hey, we're just going to show you guys a tech demo for it, which caught a lot of people off guard, because I think most of us were at least believed that it was in such early development they weren't going to be ready for any of this. They must have been working on this for a little while, because he showed us an interesting tech demo that seems to kind of mirror the idea that No Man's Sky was trying to get at, which was a very large-scale universe that you kind of explore. And he showed us the initial introduction, where you were basically the monkey from the cutscene, and you were actually delivering pizzas. Like you were flying up in a little jetpack to kind of meet them on a ship, and you were going to deliver them pizzas to get money, because you start out with nothing like most games, and you kind of work your way up. But he leaves the ship, and then he kind of just wanders around, shows how large it is by zooming out, which, by the way, he goes out from the planet level to the universe level, and then he gets in his ship and leaves the entire planet, goes up into the atmosphere, and then kind of circles around. And this is interesting because a lot of people are concerned now that this is going to turn out to be like a very empty universe. This is one of the hardest things to tackle right now, right? Because a lot of times you try to put this scale of this massive feeling of being this little speck in a big universe, but then you start to realize as you explore, much like we do with No Man's Sky, the universe is very empty. There's not a lot to do in every spot, and it kind of makes it feel like it's not worth exploring almost, if you know what I mean. It gets to a point where you're just going to go through these set pieces, and then you're not going to explore every bit because there's no point. There's nothing out there. I hope they don't get too far ahead and forget that it'd be much better to draw a really good narrative, very interesting story, and rather than have these weird bits where you're kind of just floating through space, not doing anything, give us stuff to do, give us an interesting story. I hope that's how they tackle it, and I hope they don't rush it to the point where we need patches after the fact to have a complete game. But we'll see. The tech demo looked cool. It looked like it ran well. It looked like he was running it on a computer, obviously, with an Xbox controller. So we still don't know anything at all about platforms. As far as I can tell right now, just because he was playing on the PC, it's PC only right now. So we'll see you guys when we get closer to their release date, or at least when they're ready to announce platforms. Who knows? Maybe it's a console exclusive. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see, but at least what we see now looks promising. But I'm going to be cautiously optimistic now that we know a little more about how they're trying to tackle this. Now, and if you missed it, the Steam sale started. I checked it out. There's a lot of good stuff on sale right now, including Xenoverse 2. Seems to be half off at like $25, which is pretty good. And what's really funny is when it first started, Steam seemed to have some trouble, and it actually went down for a little bit. I was trying to shop on Steam, and then all of a sudden I was hit with a complete Steam is overloaded with traffic message. So expect that from time to time, but the sale is going to run all the way to July 5th, and I'm sure your wish list is probably blowing up like mine was, saying this is on sale, this is on sale, this is on sale. Give us your wallet. Now, you guys also remember how we were talking about Microsoft's HoloLens and their mixed reality, well, really their augmented reality, and it sounded cool, but we were waiting to see just some different aspects, or at least how it could technically work in the real world. Well, people are already starting to program and come up with really cool ideas, and you're about to see something that's very, very neat. There's a person by the name of Abhishek Singh, and they decided, well, why don't we make it so that you can run down a park in New York City and play Mario? And that's what they did. It's very cool. Take a look here. It's very neat because when you put the glasses on, you actually touch the start select menu where it's one player, and then all of a sudden right in front of them, an entire world from Mario pops up. Now, because Mario is supposed to be a 2D game and it's all of a sudden 3D, it's pretty clear that you can just kind of go around obstacles. You don't have to follow him. In fact, he kind of cheats by not jumping over the pipes, you know? I mean, you gotta kind of try to lunge over those. But there was a cool part where there was a pit in front of him, and he jumps over the pit, he jumps on the Goombas, and it was kind of neat. I was a little surprised more people didn't stop and kind of look at him like, what are you doing? Because so many people passed right by him, not even thinking about it. I guess it's different in New York. If I did this out in the street here by my house, people would probably be looking at me, or at least ask me what I'm doing. But hey, there you go. People in New York City, who cares? I'm sure there's worse things you pass by in New York City. Anyway, this is cool because this can show some actual uses for this HoloLens augmented reality. Can you imagine when they actually refine it and it becomes you could go into any world you want right in front of you? The only issue I have with augmented reality is you cannot feel anything in front of you. So any of these obstacles that are placed in front of you, you could technically just walk right through them. I mean, there's not much stopping you. Maybe they can have a health bar that like goes down if you run into objects, but then you can't interact with them at all. Like, you'll never really be able to get on top of like for example, you see like the little steps. You're not going to walk up them. It seems cool. I just don't know if you'll be able to interact with them like the way they're hoping you will. Next up, guys, we have the lead producer and director of Final Fantasy XIV kind of talking about the Switch a little bit, because they expressed interest in the Nintendo Switch a little while ago. If you remember that, they kind of talked about how they would like to bring Final Fantasy XIV to the Nintendo Switch. Yes, the Switch can run Final Fantasy XIV fine. They've already expressed this, but there are some little caveats they're trying to get worked out before they can do this. And in an interview, Kotaku asked some questions to Mr. Yoshida about when and how can we make that happen. So here are his comments to Kotaku after asking these questions. He said, "I've said this on several occasions, but it hasn't changed. We would love for as many players to be on Final Fantasy XIV as possible. Conversations have been had with Mr. Phil Spencer of Microsoft and the upper management teams of Nintendo. But I have proposed a condition every time I speak with any platform manufacturers. It's that the game has to have the capability of cross-platform play." And guys, this is where it becomes interesting, because if you remember correctly, who's the one who doesn't want to do cross-platform play? The system that the game's already on. Like, it's already on the PS4. Sony doesn't want cross-platform play. So are they talking, at least in this interview, is he talking about having to have cross-platform play between the PS4, the Xbox One, and the Switch, along with the PC, which isn't a big deal right now because everyone seems to be fine cross-playing with the PC. But does that mean that everyone has to work together? Because right now it seems like Nintendo, Microsoft, they're on board with any of that. We see it with Rocket League, we see it with Minecraft. The one company that is not on board with crossplay that could be holding something like Final Fantasy XIV from going to every system possible is Sony. This is really weird, because Sony has generally been pretty good about these kind of things, but it looks like they just don't want to do crossplay. That might be the only thing holding this game back from the Switch, from Microsoft's Xbox Ones. We can't confirm that, but based on two other games that are cross-playing with each other, it seems like that might be the case. And that would be a shame, because having Final Fantasy XIV on a system like, let's say you just have an Xbox One, but you want to play it, it's kind of a shame you can't right now. Or when the Xbox One X comes out, maybe at that point they can really push as much as they can through to that system in terms of visuals. Or maybe you want the portable aspect of, say, the Switch. You're going to keep it around your house, obviously. Needs a stable internet connection with broadband. That's fine. But still, you could at least walk around your house and play Final Fantasy XIV, or dock it, and maybe even HD Rumble could be incorporated. I'm sure there's a lot of things they'd like to do here. I have a feeling, though, that Sony is maybe causing them some bumps in the road, or even an entire roadblock at this point. But we'll have to see if we get anything else about this, because it seems like they want this game on as many systems as possible, but there's something in the background holding them up. Now, there's also the possibility that they're just talking about Nintendo and Microsoft cross-playing with the PC. Microsoft has zero problem with that, right? I mean, why would they cross-play with their own OS at that point? But Nintendo has been the one that a lot of people were curious about if that would happen. They've kind of put those thoughts to rest now with Rocket League and Minecraft, recently that is, being cross-play compatible. So maybe that's the case. Maybe that's all it took now. And right now, Final Fantasy XIV could be in talks. We don't know. We'll just have to wait and see. The last bit of news comes from Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2 on the Nintendo Switch. So this is, of course, releasing at some point this fall from what we've heard. Looks like some more information came out about resolution and frame rate and about the DLC, strangely. But let's go ahead and talk about the visual aspects of the game first. It looks like it will run at 720p in handheld mode, like we would all expect, because the screen's 720p. No point in going above that. When docked, it will be 900p. I assume upscaled to a TV's 1080p setting. Fine. It's going to be 30 frames per second across the board, unless you do one-on-one battles, which would be 60 frames per second. Most of the game, though, takes place away from that one versus one competitive nature, because most of the time you are doing PvE or co-op online, where you are doing big raids or bosses, stuff like that. Still, 30 frames is not bad. Of course, the counterparts are all running at 60 frames, so it's going to look slower on the Switch, but keep in mind, you can also walk away from your TV with the Switch, or take it on the go if you want to do single player. So that's the thing we run into with the Switch, like we've talked about before. Concessions have to be made at times, but you always have that portable aspect, because it's a portable system as well. And it's not a big deal, I don't think, because, of course, I remember playing the first Xenoverse at a 30 frames per second, and it was fine. So really, you can kind of look at it however you want. Do you want the performance? Maybe you get a PC or an Xbox One X or a PS4. But I do know a lot of people love the fact that the Switch is portable, myself included. I don't mind a 30 frames per second experience if I can take it with me on the go wherever I'm going. So in this case, the only thing I don't like, that I wish they had kind of turned around, is that the DLC is not going to be included with it. And that, I feel like that I feel like they could have done some good here by packaging it in maybe as a complete edition or something and say, look, it's coming out later than the other systems. Obviously, it's been out for a little while now. Here you go. It has all the DLC. I don't really see what the problem is there. Disgaea 5 did that. All the DLC was included with the Switch version. But right now, it looks like no DLC is included, 900p docked, 30 frames, 720p in handheld mode, 30 frames, but 60 frames per second either way if you're doing a 1v1 battle with someone else. That's it for Newswave today, guys. Make sure you comment, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Let me think about anything we talked about today, whether it is these weird Switch shortages that they have been fighting through. Looks like maybe they got it all figured out and they're planning a new allotment for Splatoon 2. That's good news. Let me think about Beyond Good and Evil 2, specifically this tech demo that we saw. Do you think they're maybe trying to get a little too ambitious? Maybe they should tackle more of a narrative-driven game where it's more like less of a big open world and more like a straight-up story-driven game. I'm very curious about your thoughts on that tech demo because it was very interesting to see what they're attempting to do here. That's it, guys. I'm off to Too Many Games. If you're coming by, definitely stop by, wander around, see if you can find me. I'll just be hanging out. I don't really have anywhere to be when I'm there. It's going to be kind of wandering around checking out retro games. I'll see you guys on Monday.